The restaurant hummed with the kind of polished chaos only a corporate event could muster. Clinking glasses, forced laughter, and the faint scent of overpriced cologne. I was nursing a glass of Pinot, half listening to my coworker drone on about quarterly projections when I spotted him across the room. James, my husband's old college buddy, someone I hadn't seen in years. He was leaning against a high-top table, smirking at something his companion said. His tie loosened just enough to signal he didn't buy into the whole suit-and-schmooze vibe. I excused myself, weaving through the crowd, curiosity pulling me toward him. "James, is that you?" I called out, and his head snapped up. His grin was instant, familiar, like we'd just seen each other last week. "Well, damn. Look at you," he said, stepping forward to give me a quick hug. "Didn't expect to see you in this circus." "Same. Thought you were still out in Chicago or something." I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, suddenly aware of how long it had been since I'd thought about him. Nah, moved back a few months ago. New job, new chaos. He waved a hand vaguely, his eyes scanning me with a playful glint. "You still married to that guy who used to steal my beer?" I laughed, maybe a little too loud. "Yeah, still with Mark. He's probably at home cursing the Lakers game right now." We fell into easy banter, the kind that feels like slipping into an old jacket. He teased me about my fancy job. I ribbed him about his questionable taste in music back in the day. But there was something else under it. A spark, maybe, or just the thrill of reconnecting with someone who knew me before I was Mark's wife, or the marketing lead. His jokes landed a little too close. His glances lingered a beat too long. Nothing overt, just enough to make my pulse tick up. "So, you sticking around for the speeches?" he asked, nodding toward the stage where our CEO was about to bore everyone to death. "Hell no," I said, grinning. "I'm out of here as soon as I can fake a phone call." "Smart move. Maybe I'll follow your lead." He raised his glass, his eyes holding mine. "Good seeing you, though. Let's not wait another decade, yeah?" "Yeah," I echoed, my voice softer than I meant. We parted ways, but as I slipped out to the valet, my mind kept replaying the way he'd said my name, the way his laugh had felt like a secret shared just between us. It was nothing, I told myself, just nostalgia messing with my head. But as I drove home, the city lights blurring past, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, like a door I hadn't noticed had cracked open. Mark was sprawled, on the couch when I got home, half asleep with a beer in hand. "How was the schmooze fest?" he mumbled. "Same old," I said, kicking off my heels. I didn't mention James, not because it mattered, but because I wasn't sure what to say. "Not yet." He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave mine. We drifted toward the balcony, away from the chatter and the haze of cigarette smoke. The night air was cool, and I leaned against the railing, the city sprawling out below us. For a moment, we just stood there, the silence comfortable but charged, like we both knew we were crossing some invisible line. "So what's your deal these days?" I asked, sipping my wine to fill the quiet. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, it's been a rough year. Split with my girlfriend, moved cross-country, new jobs kicking my ass." His voice was raw, not the polished charm from the restaurant. "Feels like I'm starting over, you know?" I nodded, surprised by how much he was sharing. "That's heavy. You okay?" "Getting there." He looked at me, his expression softer. "It's just hard to find people who get it, who don't make you feel like you're screwing it all up." I felt a tug in my chest, a mix of sympathy and something else I didn't want to name. "You're not screwing it up, you're figuring it out. That's more than most people do." He smiled, but it was tinged with something bittersweet. "You always were good at making people feel less like a mess." I laughed, but it came out shaky. "Trust me, I'm plenty messy myself." Hard to believe. His voice dropped, and he stepped closer, just enough that I could smell his cologne. "You seem like you've got it all together." "Fake it till you make it," I said. But my throat felt tight. The way he was looking at me, it wasn't just friendly. It was like he saw me, really saw me, in a way I hadn't felt in years. We stayed out there too long, talking about everything and nothing. Old memories, dumb dreams, the kind of stuff you don't tell just anyone. When we finally went back inside, The party felt too loud, too crowded. Mark waved me over, oblivious, but I felt like I was carrying a secret I hadn't meant to pick up. Later, as we drove home, Mark was rattling on about some guy's homebrew recipe. I nodded, staring out the window, James's words echoing in my head. I told myself it was just a conversation, just two old friends catching up. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself, and that scared me more than anything. The concert was electric, the kind of night where the crowd's energy feels like it's lifting you off the ground. My favorite band was tearing through their set, and I was right in the thick of it, screaming lyrics with strangers, my hands in the air. James was next to me, his shoulder brushing mine as we swayed to the beat. We'd ended up here by chance, mutual friends, a group chat, and a last-minute ticket. Mark was out of town for work, so I'd said yes without overthinking it. The lights flashed, the bass thumped, and James leaned in to shout something over the music. "You still know every word to this one," he yelled, grinning. "Damn right." I shot back, laughing. His eyes were bright, caught in the stage lights, and for a second, I forgot the crowd, the noise, just saw him. Then the song hit its peak, and the whole place erupted. Without warning, James turned, grabbed my face, and kissed me. It was quick, fierce, like he'd been holding it back all night. My brain short-circuited, but my body didn't. My hands found his jacket, and I kissed him back, caught up in the chaos of the moment. It lasted maybe 5 seconds before reality slammed into me. I pulled away, my heart racing, my face hot, despite the cool night air. "Shit," I said, stepping back, my voice barely audible over the music. "What was that?" James looked as stunned as I felt, his hand still hovering where he'd touched my cheek. I don't know. I got carried away. I'm sorry." I shook my head, trying to catch my breath. "No, it's fine. Just, we can't do that." My words felt clumsy, like I was trying to convince myself as much as him. "Yeah, you're right." He ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. "Let's just forget it happened, okay?" "Okay," I said, but my stomach twisted. The crowd was still roaring, oblivious to the earthquake that had just rocked my world. We stayed for the rest of the set, but the vibe was off. I kept my distance, focusing on the stage, but I could feel him next to me, the space between us, heavy with what we weren't saying. When the show ended, we walked out with the group, making small talk like nothing had happened. He didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. By the time I got to my car, my hands were shaking as I fumbled with my keys. I sat there for a minute, staring at the dashboard, replaying the kiss in my head. It wasn't just the act. It was how much I'd wanted it, even for that fleeting second. That's what scared me. Driving home, I tried to shove it down, tell myself it was a fluke, a stupid mistake. But the guilt was already creeping in, sharp and unrelenting. I'd crossed a line, and even if we'd agreed to bury it, I knew it wouldn't stay buried. Not for me. When I got home, the house was dark. Quiet. I poured a glass of water, my reflection in the kitchen window looking like someone I didn't quite recognize. The house was quiet when I got back from the concert, the kind of stillness that amplifies every creak of the floorboards. I kicked off my shoes and dropped my bag by the door, my head still buzzing from the night. Mark was home, sprawled on the couch with his laptop, probably catching up on work emails. He glanced up as I walked in, his glasses slightly askew. "Hey, how was the show?" he asked, his voice casual, but his eyes lingered on me a second longer than usual. "Awesome," I said, forcing a smile as I headed to the kitchen. Band was on fire. Crowd was nuts. My words sounded rehearsed, like I was reading from a script. I grabbed a seltzer from the fridge, the cold can grounding me as I tried to keep my voice steady. "Meet up with the crew, okay?" He closed his laptop, stretching his arms above his head. "Yeah, everyone was there. Sarah, Tom, the usual." I leaned against the counter, avoiding his gaze. James's name was on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed it. Instead, I rattled off some half-true story about Sarah spilling her drink and Tom trying to dance. Mark chuckled, and I felt a pang of relief. He wasn't suspicious. Not yet. But as I stood there, sipping my seltzer, my stomach churned. I'd never lied to Mark before, Not like this. Little white lies, sure, like saying I was fine when I was stressed. But this was different. The kiss flashed in my mind, James's hands on my face, the way my heart had raced. I pushed it away, but the guilt clung to me like damp clothes. You okay? Mark asked, his brow furrowing. You seem, I don't know, off. I froze, my grip tightening on the can. Just tired, I said too quickly. Long night, you know. I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow, even to me. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't fully convinced. All right, you coming to bed soon? In a bit, I said, turning to rinse the can in the sink, grateful for an excuse to face away. I heard him shuffle upstairs, and the moment he was gone, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I stayed in the kitchen longer than I needed to, wiping down counters that were already clean, trying to sort through the mess in my head. It was one kiss, I told myself. A mistake. We'd agreed to forget it. But the lie I'd just told Mark, it felt like a crack in something solid, something I'd always taken for granted. I didn't know how to undo it, or if I even could. When I finally climbed into bed, Mark was already half asleep, his breathing slow and steady. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. I kept replaying the night, not just the kiss, but the way I'd felt before it. Alive, seen, wanted. That was the part I couldn't shake, and it terrified me. Because if I was honest with myself, I wasn't just scared of Mark finding out. I was scared of what I might do next. The reunion was packed, a sweaty gym-turned-party hall filled with faces I hadn't seen since high school. I was there with Mark, mingling with old classmates, but my nerves were on edge. James was there too, and I'd spotted him the second we walked in, leaning against a table, laughing with some guy I vaguely remembered. I'd told myself I could handle it, that we'd keep it friendly, distant. But the air felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. Mark was off grabbing us drinks when James made his way over. Didn't peg you for the reunion type, he said, his tone teasing but his eyes sharp, like he was testing the waters. Free booze and bad DJ choices? Couldn't resist, I shot back, keeping my voice light. But my pulse ticked up. We hadn't talked since the concert, not really, just a few group texts with mutual friends. I'd hoped that would reset things, but standing here now, I wasn't so sure. He smirked, stepping closer to dodge someone passing by. You look good. Bet you're breaking hearts left and right tonight. I rolled my eyes, but my cheeks warmed. Save the charm for someone who's buying it. Oh, come on, I'm just saying. His voice dropped, and he leaned in slightly like he was sharing a secret. You always did stand out in a crowd. My stomach flipped, and I hated how much I liked it. James, don't, I said, glancing around to make sure Mark wasn't nearby. But he just grinned, undeterred, and kept finding ways to pull me into conversation. Little comments, quick glances, nothing obvious but enough to keep me on edge. When Mark came back with our drinks, James didn't miss a beat, shifting to small. Talk about some old high school prank. But even then, I caught the way he'd look at me when Mark wasn't paying attention. Like he was daring me to react. It was subtle, but it got under my skin, stirring up a mix of irritation and something I didn't want to admit, excitement. The night wore on, and James kept circling back, always with an excuse. A story to tell, a question about someone we both knew. Each time I told myself to shut it down, to walk away, but I didn't. I laughed at his jokes, matched his banter, let myself get caught up in the game. It felt dangerous, reckless, like flirting with a fire I knew I couldn't control. Grike. The time Mark and I left, my head was spinning. In the car, he was quiet, focused on the road. You and James seemed chatty, he said, his tone neutral but pointed. I shrugged, my heart stuttering. Just catching up. You know, old times. He nodded, but his jaw was tight. I stared out, the window, my thoughts a tangle of guilt and defiance. James's attention had felt like a drug, and I'd let myself take hit after hit. I knew I was playing with something I couldn't afford to lose, but part of me, a part I didn't want to face, didn't want to stop. The park was buzzing with our friend group's usual Sunday chaos. Blankets spread out, coolers packed with beer, someone's dog chasing a frisbee. I was trying to relax, sprawled on the grass with a seltzer, but my eyes kept drifting to James. He was across the lawn, deep in conversation with my friend Lauren, his laugh carrying over the chatter. She was giggling, touching his arm, and he was eating it up, leaning in like she was the only person there. I told myself I didn't care. After the reunion, I'd sworn to keep my distance, to stop letting him get in my head. But watching him now, my chest tightened, a sharp twist. I didn't expect jealousy. It hit me like a slap, and I hated it. I had no right to feel this way. Not with Mark sitting next to me, scrolling on his phone, oblivious. "You good?" Mark asked, glancing up. "Yeah, just zoning out," I said, forcing a smile. But my eyes flicked back to James and Lauren. He was gesturing wildly, telling some story, and she was hanging on every word. I shifted, sitting up straighter, suddenly hyper-aware of my own presence. Without thinking, I grabbed a football from the blanket and stood. "Hey, anyone up for a toss?" James's head turned at my voice, and I caught the briefest flicker of his attention. Gotcha, I thought, then immediately felt pathetic. I lobbed the ball to Tom, who fumbled it, and soon a few of us were messing around, laughing and shouting. I made a point to be loud, to move with a confidence I didn't feel, knowing James could see me. When I caught the ball and spun away from Sarah's tackle, I glanced his way. He was watching. His conversation with Lauren paused. "Nice moves," he called out, his grin teasing, but his eyes locked on mine. Lauren said something, pulling his focus back, but I'd gotten what I wanted. A spark of his attention, a reminder that I could still turn his head. It felt like a win, but it left a sour taste. Later, as we packed up, James wandered over, tossing a water bottle between his hands. "Didn't know you had that kind of game," he said, his tone light but pointed. "Plenty you don't know," I shot back, keeping my voice playful but meeting his gaze. For a second, it was just us, the rest of the group fading into the background. Then Mark called my name, and I snapped back to reality, my stomach lurching. On the drive home, Mark was chatty, talking about plans for next weekend. I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the way I'd acted, how I'd baited James, how I'd let myself care about his attention. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was a compulsion, and I was losing control. Worse, I could feel Mark's trust in me, steady and unearned, and it made me want to crawl out of my skin. I was digging a hole, and I didn't know how to stop. The fight with Mark was brutal, the kind that leaves you raw and hollow. It started small, something about me forgetting to handle a bill, but it snowballed into everything we'd been avoiding. His long hours, my distraction, the way we'd been drifting. "You're not even here half the time," he'd shouted, and I'd fired back, accusing him of caring more about work than us. By the end, we were both spent, and I stormed out, needing air, needing escape. I ended up at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and too many plants. I hadn't planned to call James, but my fingers dialed his number before I could second-guess it. "You free?" I texted. "Need to talk." He was there in 20 minutes, sliding into the seat across from me, his expression cautious but open. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice softer than usual, like he could sense I was fraying. I took a deep breath, staring at the coffee I hadn't touched. "Mark and I had a blowout. It's bad. I don't even know where to start." My voice cracked, and I hated how vulnerable I sounded. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Start wherever. I'm listening." So I did. I spilled it all. The fight, the distance, the way I felt like I was losing myself in my marriage. But it wasn't just about Mark. I told James about the guilt eating me up, the way I couldn't stop thinking about him, about us, even though I knew it was wrong. "I'm so messed up," I said, my hands twisting the napkin into knots. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." He was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching mine. "You're not messed up. You're just stuck, trying to figure out what you want." His voice was steady, but there was a weight to it, like he was choosing his words carefully. "I get it. I've been there." I looked at him, really looked, and felt that pull again. The one that made me want to lean across the table and forget everything else. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he said it, like he'd already been through this kind of chaos, and come out the other side. Maybe it was the image of Mark's face, hurt and angry, flashing in my mind. I can't keep doing this, I said, more to myself than him. This thing with us, it's not fair to anyone. He nodded, slow, like he'd been expecting it. I know, and I'm not trying to push you into anything. But I'm here, okay? As a friend, if that's what you need. The word friend landed like a lifeline. I clung to it, nodding. Yeah, friends. That's what I need. But even as I said it, my heart ached, torn between relief and regret. We talked a while longer, about lighter things, until the cafe started to close. When we parted ways, I felt clearer but not lighter. I'd made a choice, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. Driving home, I braced myself for the silence waiting there, knowing I'd have to face Mark and myself. Eventually, life became a tightrope, and I was wobbling with every step. After the cafe, I'd doubled down on keeping things platonic with James. Short texts, group hangouts only, no more late-night talks. But the effort to act normal was exhausting, like I was holding my breath all the time. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, half expecting Mark to glance over and ask who it was. He hadn't brought up the reunion or James again, but I could feel his eyes on me sometimes, like he was trying to read a book with missing pages. I was jumpy, second-guessing everything. At dinner, I'd catch myself staring at my plate, lost, in thought, and Mark would ask, "You sure you're okay?" I'd nod, smile, say work was stressful, but the lie tasted bitter. The truth was, I was terrified, not just of him finding out about the kiss or my feelings, but of what it all meant. I'd always thought of myself as honest, loyal. Now, I wasn't so sure. One night, we were watching a movie, his arm around me on the couch. It should have felt cozy, safe, but I was hyper-aware of every move, like I didn't deserve the comfort. My phone lit up on the coffee table, a group chat notification, nothing big, but I grabbed it too fast, fumbling to silence. Mark's eyes flicked over, and I saw the question in them. Just Sarah being annoying, I said, laughing it off, but my voice was too high. He didn't push, just turned back to the screen, but the air felt heavier. Later, when I was washing dishes, he came up behind me, his hands on my shoulders. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" he asked, his tone soft but probing. My heart thudded. "Of course," I said, keeping my eyes on the sink. "It's just been a lot lately. I'm fine, promise." Another lie, slick and easy, but it left a knot in my stomach. He squeezed my shoulders and walked away, but I knew he wasn't convinced. I could see it in the way he'd pause before answering me, the way he'd watch me when he thought I wasn't looking. He was starting to suspect something, and I couldn't blame him. I was acting like a stranger, guarded and skittish, and no amount of fake smiles could hide it. At night, I'd lie awake, my mind racing. What if he saw a text from James? What if someone from the concert mentioned we'd been close? The kiss was buried, but my feelings weren't. They were a live wire, sparking every time I saw James's name or heard his voice in my head. I wanted to come clean, to spill everything and beg for forgiveness, but the thought of Mark's face, hurt, betrayed, stopped me cold. I couldn't lose him, not over something I swore I'd never let happen again. But the fear was relentless, a shadow I couldn't shake. Every day, I braced for the moment it would all unravel, and the waiting was almost worse than the truth itself. I was trapped in my own head, and the tighter I clung to my secret, the more it felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Lauren's text came out of nowhere, late on a Thursday when I was already fraying at the edges. "We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m. No emojis, no banter, just a cold edge that made my stomach drop. Lauren and I had been tight for years, the kind of friend you call at 2 a.m. when life implodes. But lately, I'd been dodging her, too caught up in my own mess to keep up our usual rhythm. Now her message felt like a summons. I met her at our usual spot, a cozy place with 2 loud espresso machines. She was already there, stirring her latte, her face unreadable. "Hey," I said, sliding into the booth, trying to sound normal. "What's up?" She didn't smile. "You tell me." Her voice was low, sharp, like she was holding back something big. You've been weird for weeks, distant, and I'm not the only one who's noticed. I gripped my coffee, my pulse spiking. Work's been nuts, you know that. I'm just— Cut the crap, she interrupted, leaning forward. I saw you at the park, the way you were with James, and I heard about the concert. You two were way too close for just friends. My mouth went dry. Lauren, it's not what you think. We're not— Don't lie to me, she snapped, her eyes flashing. I know you, and I know something's going on. You're sneaking around, and it's obvious. Mark deserves better than this. Her words hit like a punch. I wanted to argue, to deny everything, but the truth was choking me. The kiss, the feelings, the lies, they were all real, and she'd seen right through me. It's not like that, I said weakly. It was a mistake. I'm trying to fix it. Fix it? She scoffed, crossing her arms. You're still hanging around him, acting like nothing's wrong. And if you don't tell Mark, I will. My heart stopped. You're joking. You'd really do that? I'm not joking, she said, her voice cold. He's my friend too, and I'm not going to sit here and watch you play him like this. You've got a week to come clean, or I'm telling him everything I know. I stared at her, my mind racing. This was Lauren, my confidant, my safe space, and now she was holding a grenade to my life. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice shaking. I thought we were friends. We are, she said, softer now, but her eyes were hard. That's why I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing. But I'm not letting you hurt him. She left me sitting there, the cafe noise fading to a dull roar. I felt exposed, cornered, like the walls were closing in. I could tell Mark, myself, rip the Band-Aid off. But the thought of his face, his trust, shattered, made me sick. Or I could beg Lauren to stay quiet, but that meant leaning into the lie even harder. Either way, I was screwed. I walked home in a daze, her ultimatum, looping in my head. My secret wasn't mine anymore. It was a ticking bomb, and I had no idea how to defuse it. All I knew was that I'd lost something with Lauren, and maybe with myself, that I might never get back. Mark's voice was calm, but it cut like a blade. We need to talk. He was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, his face a mix of exhaustion and something sharper, suspicion. It was late, the house dark except for the glow of the stove light. I'd been expecting this, dreading it, ever, since Lauren's ultimatum. Her deadline was looming and my nerves were shot, making me clumsy, distant, a walking red flag. I set down my phone, my hands clammy. Okay, what's going on? I tried to sound casual, but my voice betrayed me, thin and unsteady. He didn't sit, just leaned against the counter, his eyes locked on mine. You've been acting strange for weeks, jumpy, secretive. I'm not an idiot. I know something's up, so just tell me. What's going on with you? My heart pounded, Lauren's threat echoing in my head. I could come clean right now, tell him about the kiss, the feelings, James. But the words stuck, in my throat, heavy as stones. Nothing's going on, I said, hating how weak it sounded. I'm just stressed. Work, you know. Work? He let out a bitter laugh. Don't give me that. You're barely here, even when you're in the room. You're on your phone all the time, you dodge questions, you lie about where you've been. His voice rose, not loud but sharp. I found a receipt from that cafe you said you were at with Sarah. Except Sarah was out of town that day. So who were you with? My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten about the receipt, a careless slip in my pocket. It was just a work thing, I stammered, scrambling. I met a colleague. I must have mixed up the days. He shook his head, his jaw tight. You're lying. I can see it in your face. You think I don't know you after all these years? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a raw edge. If you're hiding something, just say it. Because this sneaking around, this pretending, it's killing me. Guilt clawed at me, but fear was stronger. If I told him now, I'd lose everything. His trust, our life, the future we'd built. I'm not hiding anything, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I don't know why you're doing this, accusing me like I'm some kind of liar. Maybe you're the one who's paranoid. His eyes narrowed, hurt flashing across his face. Don't turn this on me. I'm trying to give you a chance to be honest. But if you're gonna stand there and gaslight me, then maybe I'm the one who's been blind. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving me frozen, the air thick with everything unsaid. I wanted to run after him, to confess and beg for forgiveness, but my feet wouldn't move. Lauren's deadline was 2 days away, and now Mark was circling, the truth on his own. I'd backed myself into a corner, and every choice felt like a trap. All I could do was keep lying, keep pretending, and pray it wouldn't blow up in my face. But deep down, I knew the truth was closing in, and I was running out of time. Lauren's deadline was tomorrow, and the weight of it was crushing me. Mark Cr. Accusations from the night before still hung in the air, his words replaying in my head like a broken record. I couldn't face him, couldn't sit in our house with its suffocating silence. So I ran. Not physically, not yet, but to the one place I knew I shouldn't go, James. I texted him on impulse, my hands shaking. Can we meet? Just to talk. He replied fast, suggesting a dive bar on the edge of town, somewhere quiet. I told Mark I was grabbing drinks with a coworker, the lie slipping out too easily. He barely looked up from his laptop, just nodded, and that hurt more than another fight would've. The bar was dim, smelling of stale beer and fried food. James was already there, nursing a whiskey at a corner table. He looked different, tired maybe, his usual charm dialed down. Rough day? He asked as I slid into the booth. Rough life, I said, forcing a half smile. I ordered a gin and tonic, my fingers tapping nervously on the table. I just needed to get out. Everything's a mess. He raised an eyebrow, leaning back. Mark again? I nodded, but I didn't want to talk about Mark. Not really. I wanted to forget, to lose myself in the way James made me feel. Alive. Wanted. Anything but the fraud I'd become. But as we talked, something was off. He was guarded, his answers short, his eyes not quite meeting mine. You okay? I asked, sensing the shift. He sighed, swirling his drink. Look, I'm gonna be real with you. Whatever we've been doing, it's getting heavy. I thought we were just having fun, catching up, but it's starting to feel like more. And I'm not sure I'm built for that. His words stung, sharper than I expected. I didn't mean for it to get like this, I said, my voice low. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I get it, he said, softer now. But you've got a lot to figure out, and I don't want to be the guy who makes it harder. He leaned forward, his tone firm but not unkind. Maybe we need some space, for your sake, not just mine. I stared at him, my chest tight. I'd come here chasing a distraction, a way to dodge my problems, but instead, I was being pushed away. Part of me wanted to argue, to cling to the spark we'd had, but deep down I knew he was right. This wasn't fun anymore, it was a wrecking ball, and I was the one swinging it. We finished our drinks, the conversation stilted, and when we left he gave me a quick hug, nothing more. Take care of yourself, he said, and I felt the finality in it. Driving home, I was numb. I'd run to James to escape the truth, but all I'd done was prove I couldn't outrun it. Mark was waiting, Lauren's threat was ticking down, and now even James was pulling back. I'd built this mess, and as I pulled into the driveway, the lights of our house glowing softly, I realized I was about to lose everything I'd been, too selfish to protect. I woke up to a text from Mark, sent at 3 a.m. We're done talking around this. I know about James. My heart stopped, the room spinning as I read it again, praying I'd misread. He wasn't home. His side of the bed was cold, his keys gone. Panic clawed at me as I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I saw the missed call from Lauren, time-stamped an hour before Mark's text. She'd done it. She'd told him. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, trying to piece together what she'd said. The kiss? The meetings? My feelings? It didn't matter. Whatever she'd shared was enough to break everything. I texted Mark, please, let's talk. I can explain. But it felt hollow even as I typed it. Explain what? That I'd betrayed him, lied to his face, let myself fall for someone else? He didn't respond. Hours later, he came home, his face a mask of anger and pain. "Lauren called me," he said, his voice low, like he was holding himself together by a thread. "Said you've been sneaking around with James for months, meeting him, lying about it. She saw you two at that bar last night. Said it wasn't the first time." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words died. "It wasn't like that," I said, my voice breaking. "It was a mistake. One time at a concert, we kissed, but I stopped it. I swear, I've been trying to fix this." "Fix it?" He laughed, a bitter sound that cut me open. "You've been lying to me every day, hiding texts, making up stories. I trusted you and you made me feel like I was crazy for doubting you." His eyes were red, like he'd been up all night. "Do you even love me anymore?" "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I do. I messed up, but I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Why him? Why wasn't I enough?" I had no answer, just sobs that shook my whole body. He grabbed his jacket and walked out, slamming the door. I collapsed on the couch, the silence deafening. By nightfall, I got a text from Sarah, our mutual friend. "Mark's staying with Tom. He's a wreck. What the hell happened?" Word was spreading, and with it, the judgment. Friends stopped texting, unfollowed me online. Lauren didn't answer my calls. She'd lit the match and walked away. I was alone in our house, surrounded by photos of us, reminders of a life I'd torched. I kept seeing Mark's face, the way he'd looked at me like I was a stranger. I'd lost him, lost our friends, lost the trust I'd taken for granted. And for what? A fleeting thrill that was never even real? The weight of it crushed me, and, as I sat there, staring at the empty space where Mark should have been, I realized the full cost of my choices. There was no undoing this, no way to claw back what I'd destroyed. The house felt like a tomb, every corner holding ghosts of what used to be. Mark hadn't come back, and his silence was louder than any fight we'd ever had. I wandered from room to room, picking up random things, a coffee mug he loved, a hoodie he'd left on the couch, trying to anchor myself to something solid. But it was no use. Everything was tainted, and I was the one who'd poisoned it. Hadn't seen James since the bar, but I couldn't stop thinking about him, not with longing, but with a bitter clarity that was worse. I'd built him up in my head, turned him into this escape, this answer to some vague ache I couldn't name. But now, looking back, I saw the truth. He'd never promised me anything, never looked at me like I was his future. To him, I was a spark, a moment, not a commitment. He'd backed off when it got heavy, and I'd been too caught up to see it for what it was, a fling he could walk away from. I sat on the floor of our living room, my phone dark beside me. No texts from Mark, no calls from friends. Even Sarah, who'd always been neutral, had gone quiet after her last message. I'd burned every bridge, and for what? A fantasy that crumbled the second it was tested. I thought about the concert, the kiss, the way I'd chased James's attention like it could fix me. I'd been so stupid, so selfish, trading everything, real for something that was never mine to keep. The worst part was facing myself. I'd always prided myself on being honest, dependable, the kind of person people could count on. But I'd lied to Mark, to Lauren, to everyone, and worst of all, to myself. I'd told myself it was just a crush, just a phase, but I'd let it consume me, let it unravel everything I valued. Now I was left with nothing but regret and a version of myself I didn't recognize. I pulled out a notebook, trying to write down what I'd say to Mark if he ever gave me the chance. But every word felt wrong, too small for the damage I'd done. "I'm sorry, didn't cover it. I was lost," sounded like an excuse. I tore the page out, crumpled it, and let it fall. My self-esteem, once a quiet strength, was in shreds. I'd defined myself by my relationships, wife, friend, confidant, and now those labels were gone, leaving me hollow. I thought about calling James, demanding answers. But what was the point? He wasn't the problem. I was. I'd made the choices, told the lies, ignored the warnings. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I curled up on the couch, the weight of my mistakes pressing down. I'd chased a mirage, and now I was stranded, alone with the truth. I'd destroyed my life for someone who never saw me the way I'd hoped, and the only person left to blame was me. Weeks bled into months, and the wreckage of my life settled into a grim new normal. Mark moved out, his stuff disappearing in boxes while I was at work. He left a note, short, no venom, just final. I can't do this anymore. Good luck. I tried calling, texting, even showed up at Tom's place where he was staying, but he wouldn't see me. His silence was a wall I couldn't climb. I wrote letters I never sent, words piling up like apologies to a ghost. He was gone, and so was the life we'd built. Friends were next. Sarah sent a polite but distant text, saying she needed space. Others just faded. No invites, no replies, just a slow erasure from group chats and gatherings. Lauren never answered. My calls, her betrayal a wound that wouldn't close. I saw her once at a grocery store, her eyes sliding past me like I was a stranger. I wanted to scream, to beg, but I just pushed my cart away, my throat tight. I tried to rebuild, to salvage something. I reached out to old colleagues, joined a book club, even started therapy, spilling my shame to a stranger who nodded and took notes. But every step felt like wading through mud. People sensed the cracks in me, the way I carried my guilt like a backpack full of stones. I'd broken trust, not just with Mark, but with everyone, and no amount of "I'm sorry" could glue it back together. Work was my only anchor, but even there, I was a shadow of myself. I'd catch myself staring at spreadsheets, my mind replaying the concert, the bar, the moment I chose James over everything else. I'd lost my spark, my confidence, and my coworkers noticed. My boss pulled me aside, asked if I was handling things okay. I nodded, lied, but the pity in her eyes said she saw through me. James was a ghost too. I heard through a mutual friend he'd started dating someone, moved on like our mess was just a blip. It hurt, not because I wanted him, but because it confirmed what I'd feared. I'd been a detour, not a destination. I didn't reach out. There was nothing left to say. Nights were the hardest. I'd sit in my empty house, the quiet deafening. I'd scroll through old photos, Mark's smile a knife in my chest. I'd think about the future we'd planned, trips, maybe kids, growing old together, and how I'd traded it for a fleeting thrill. Regret wasn't just a feeling. It was a place I lived now, a cold room with no exits. I kept hoping for a redo, a chance to fix it, but life doesn't work that way. Every choice I'd made, the kiss, the lies, the denial, had carved a path I couldn't unwalk. I was left with myself, a woman I barely knew, and the knowledge that I'd changed everything for nothing. All I could do was move forward, one heavy step at a time, carrying the consequences of a life I'd broken with my own hands.